Good afternoon and welcome to the second in the series of our interviews with parliamentary candidates in Warrington. Today we're joined by Tory Warrington South parliamentary candidate Andy Carter. Andy, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Welcome to you into the campaign centre in Warrington South.
Andy, well into the campaign now. How's it going so far?
It's going very well. I think, whenever you're immersed in a campaign like this, every now and again you have to stand back and look at the conversations you're having, the people that you're talking to, and it's going really, really well. I think the response on the doorstep is excellent. Lots of people volunteering to get involved, people asking for posters, lots of interaction on social media. So yeah, I'm really pleased with things so far.
It's widely been tipped as the Brexit election. Do you believe your stance on Brexit, particularly backing Boris Johnson's deal, will be enough to get you over the line, or do you believe your stance on local issues such as traffic and Greenbelt also have a key role to play?
Look, there's no doubt that the primary conversation that we have on the doorstep is about Brexit. That's the thing that people ask about and we talk about. But there are lots of other local issues that matter to people as well, and national issues as well. So I think it's very dangerous to think that people will only vote on issues related to Brexit, but it certainly seems to be dominating at the moment.
And in the EU referendum in 2016, how did you vote in the referendum?
Well, I voted Remain, and I've been very open about this all the way through. I wasn't involved in politics in 2016. Somebody said to me the other day, how did you campaign? Well, I didn't. I wasn't involved in any way. I was a private individual running my business. But I'm a Democrat, and I believe that when you ask people in a referendum, should we remain or should we leave? And the answer comes back, we should leave. And it was more than 1 million people more saying we should leave. We should follow that through and we should deliver on that result. And to be 3.5 years down the line, still having a debate over whether we should leave or whether we should stay, I think actually it's quite understandable why people are getting so fed up with it. And we need to get Brexit done and we need to move on.
And any concerns or fears that you had which led you to that decision to back Remain? I mean, do they still remain now? And there's been a lot said about the potential economic hit to the UK. Do you believe any economic hit would be worth taking in the shorter term?
I remember back in 2016, lots of politicians coming out and saying, as soon as we vote to leave, we're going to have one heck of a shock and the economy will go into immediate recession. And I think we've had something like 30 periods of continual growth. So actually the experts at the time were wrong in terms of what they said. Do I believe that there's going to be a rosy period ahead for us? The answer is nobody knows. If you look at the rest of the Eurozone, there's challenging times in Germany. The entire global trading market has suffered a slowdown. So if we go through the process when we go through the process of leaving in the next couple of weeks, after the election, we could see a change in the economy. Now, people will instantly say it's all related to Brexit. Might be nothing to do with Brexit. Do I believe that it's the right thing to do? Absolutely, it's the right thing to do. We need to get on. We need to get Brexit sorted. I speak to people every day who voted Leave or voted Remain, and the one thing that unites them is that they believe in democracy, and they believe when you've been asked in a referendum, should we leave or should we stay, people say, actually, we want that decision enacting.
It's quite difficult to get away from Brexit, but taking our minds away to a more local issue, the issue of Greenbelt, and in the council's emerging local plan, more than 7,000 homes earmarked for Greenbelt land. Do you believe that figure needs to come down massively?
I think the plan as it's being proposed at the moment is just simply not sound. I don't believe it would pass an independent inspection. I've looked very carefully at what's being proposed, and I don't think the infrastructure, firstly, is there to satisfy the level of build that's proposed. And that really is one of the main concerns that people have. We put new houses in, and then we don't put the schools and the doctor's surgeries and the shops and the roads in there to cater for those. So that's the primary concern that I have. I think there are lots of other issues that sit around the Greenbelt as well. I'm not actually sure we need to build as many homes as are being put forward in this plan. I think there are a number of reasons why I would be running a shorter plan where I'm running the council, and I'm not running the council, I'm not standing to run the council, but I wouldn't necessarily put forward a plan in this shape. And I think there's an opportunity to think about regeneration in a far broader sense. And it ties in with the issue of our town centre and the changing shape of the high street. We've dedicated a lot of development in the town centre to new retail, to leisure, and I think actually if we're going to really see an emerging town centre rejuvenated, we've got to put more home development into the town centre. If you go to cities like Manchester, everywhere you look, there's new apartments, there's new houses being developed. Now, we're not the same as Manchester, we're a much smaller version of that, but there's an opportunity to look at where people live in Warrington and how we can reshape the town so that it becomes a vibrant town, both through the daytime and at night time. I also think areas like Fiddler's Ferry are ready for redevelopment. When the coal-fired power station closes down next year, and it will close down next year, we need to think very carefully about how that land is reused and how we put it to maximum benefit of this area. And one of the things I've been really pleased by is the proposals from Westminster to allocate money to this area as part of the town deal scheme, to look at how we can regenerate and to look at how we can benefit people that live here. So there's a proposal for 25 million available for Warrington that the council need to apply for, and they need to put projects forward. Some of that could be used for redevelopment and for bringing those areas forward. And if I'm elected, one of the things that I would certainly be doing is campaigning for further money to come into this area, specifically for areas like Fiddler's Ferry. If we can't use it for housing, and I don't know the detailed review of the contamination in that area, but maybe it could be used for employment purposes. We should certainly be looking at getting that area cleaned up and ready to be reused in that fashion.
You mentioned infrastructure then. I know earlier this year you hailed the government's announcement that would fund part of the Western Link scheme. Obviously, if that was built along with Port Warrington, huge pieces of greenbelt land would be ripped up and green spaces. So do you believe it's worth sacrificing key areas of Warrington, key green areas of Warrington for an infrastructure project like that?
Look, let's just take it back a step. And I travel through Warrington on a daily basis, and I sit in queues with hundreds of other people trying to get through the town centre. And it is one of the issues that is raised so many times on the doorstep, that Warrington's road infrastructure is just not fit for purpose today. So we have to think differently, and we have to do things differently. And I think the first phase with the new bridge that will link in around the town centre at the end of Gainsborough Avenue will be a real benefit for us. We'll see that coming forward in the not too distant future. The second phase around the Western Link obviously is still in planning and development stage, but I do think we have to commit to tackling the issues that sit beyond that town centre area. To get from one side of Warrington to the other is a really difficult problem, and when the motorways are clogged up it becomes even worse. Now there's steps that process has got to go through, but the council's already carried out lots of consultations and discuss with residents, and I think it's now at a stage where they've got to put forward the final business case to be brought forward. So I am supportive of infrastructure investment. I do think we need to see that here in Warrington, and I think the town has missed out greatly in the past. So they're projects that I think we have to take forward.
Another key infrastructure project, the Mersey Gateway Bridge scheme. Labour recently confirmed it's got no plans to scrap the tolls at the site, but obviously in 2015, 2 weeks before the election, George Osborne, the then Chancellor, did pledge that Warrington motorists would have free crossings over that site, and many have been left more than £1,000 a year out of pocket. Is that an issue which you believe the government needs to put right? Would you like to see Warrington get that?
Well, look, on a personal level, absolutely I'd like to see that put right. But I think the reality is, Labour have told us that it's something that they were going to deal with at the last election, and it's quite clear now that they have no plans to deal with that. And the reality is that toll bridges across estuaries in all parts of the UK, with one or two exceptions that have been paid for, still have significant levels of debt outstanding in terms of construction costs, and they have to be paid for, and that's why those tolls are in place to do that. I regret deeply the comments that George Osborne made, I wasn't involved in politics, and I was a private individual listening to those comments at the same time. It's disappointing when people make those pledges and don't follow them through. But we are where we are today. And what I really want to see is investment into infrastructure elsewhere in Warrington as well, because it's not just the Western Link and the Centre Park development. It's the other developments that we've got to do to free up some of the road space in Warrington Town Centre.
And in terms of Warrington South, huge national attention also being placed on the marginal seat. Obviously, Labour has a 2,500 majority on that. Was it a blow that the Brexit Party is standing in the seat? Would you have liked to see them step aside?
I think they've got a bit of a confused strategy, if I'm honest with you. On a national basis, they've stood down all of the candidates in Conservative-held seats. And that pretty much gives an indication that they're supporting the Conservatives in those areas. But in areas where there are Conservative challengers to Labour, they haven't. I think we're all sort of scratching our heads around that one. People when I talk to, though, on the streets are saying they're going to vote Conservative because they can see the deal that's on the table that Boris has prepared. Let's be clear, Boris was challenged to go and get a deal. I don't think a lot of people thought he was going to come through on that. He did. It's been a rocky road through Parliament with all kinds of different views on whether that should be approved or not. We've now got ourselves into a situation where we've got an election and we've got a chance to implement that deal after the 12th of December.
And since the seat was created in 1983, every election apart from two, whichever party has secured Warrington South, has gone on. Well, they've secured the biggest number of seats in Parliament. Have you been in dialogue with senior Tory figures over Warrington South and the strategy that the Conservatives have? I mean, has Boris been in talks with you about it?
Well, yes, I've spoken to Boris about the seat. We were with him last Monday, and we've talked about the priorities for this area. It's very clear that this is an important seat for the government. And I think, just for a moment, we need to consider what's at stake in terms of this election. Labour cannot form a majority government. It's only the Conservatives that can form a majority government. And if we get to a situation where we have another hung parliament with Labour propped up by Nicola Sturgeon's SNP, we will have another 12 months of dither and delay. And there will be two referendums. We will see a Scottish independence referendum, and we will see another Brexit referendum. And the Brexit referendum will be on a deal negotiated by Jeremy Corbyn, which he's then indicated he would campaign against. And I think that in itself just says that there's not really a sensible policy coming out of Labour in terms of where we go forward with Brexit. I think even Faisal has indicated that he would support Remain if there were another referendum. We would be in a situation where the democratic wishes of people in the country were being overturned before they'd been implemented.
Another big part of your campaign calls for a new hospital for Warrington. Labour also doing the same. In terms of the Prime Minister's recent announcements of the funding for hospitals, obviously funding committed for 6 sites, does that not show Warrington not being one of those sites, does that not show that Warrington isn't really a top priority area for the government?
Well, I think we've just made some announcements around new equipment for Warrington Hospital, some new scanners and CT and MRI scanners, and that was equipment that was needed. I've spent time at the hospital over the last couple of weeks talking to the senior team there. I've met the new chief executive, Simon, and I think there is an incredible team of people there ready to push a button and to get some development plans put forward. But I think there are some questions that we still have to answer here. Where should the hospital be built? And what are the primary issues that we need to tackle in terms of health provision for the slightly wider area rather than just looking at Warrington? So that work needs to take place. And as soon as we've got the answers to those questions, we should be ready to put plans forward to the government to look at. I think looking at the site, there are some other issues that we could tackle on a more short-term basis as well. I mean, the work that's taken place in A&E to reorganise some of the treatment areas, I think has made really good steps. And when you go into A&E now, the process of being seen is a much smoother process. But one of the biggest issues that I've talked to at Warrington Hospital is around car parking. And maybe there is a need to just rethink some of the car parking options that we have there that would make life a lot easier for people that both are being treated there and for people that work there. If you've got to walk into the hospital on a daily basis from, I don't know, half a mile away because you can't park your car anywhere near, that's a real problem, and it's an issue in terms of retention for staff working there. So we need to look at that, and if there are opportunities to bid for finance, I'd like to support the hospital in doing that so that we can get those things tackled very quickly.
And if you're not sent to Westminster following the election on December the 12th, would that be the end of your ambitions to become MP?
Well, look, when I was selected to be the candidate for this area, the timescale for the election was in 2022. So this is an election that I wasn't expecting to be in quite the time frame that it is. I'm still only 45, and I've not spent all of my career in politics. I've spent all of my time working in business, and it's been a really interesting experience coming into this political world and working at it. I'm very focused on trying to win the seat, very focused on trying to make sure that we have a Conservative majority government, and that's the bit that I'm concentrating on at the moment. But beyond that, who knows? And
just to finish, what do you do to take your mind off Brexit and politics in general?
Well, I've got an 11-year-old son who's a big footballer, and we like to go out and watch him play at the weekends. I've got 2 dogs, spend time out on the Bridgewater Canal having a bit of a wander along there. I spent 20 years working in radio, and I've always had a love of live music. I've been really lucky to go and see some incredible bands performing in small little venues around here, and I still like doing that as well. Live music, I think, is an incredible experience to go and see people producing live music. So something that I really like to do.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you everyone for tuning in this afternoon.